venimos del mismo lugar, más bien no importa si eres norteño, chilango, del istmo, yaqui, maya, cajeta o fiera. Esta es tu tierra. Tenemos un mismo origen que no se divide ni se olvida. Porque aunque haya más de un México, México siempre es uno. Cerveza Indio.
I never stop, no, I don't quit. And when I swing, I don't miss. You ain't never seen nothing like this, yeah. You ain't seen nothing like this. Come on and give me some more. You ain't seen nothing like this.
Sus artistas favoritos son escuchados online, pero ellos solo se llevan una pequeña fracción de las ganancias. Por eso decidimos hacer algo al respecto. Marvin presenta Tip Jar. Ve a marvintipjar.com y baja la extensión para tu browser. Escucha tu banda favorita y cada que hagas clic esa canción será disfrutada 100 veces más, generando más ganancias y creando más fans para los artistas sin costarte un solo centavo. Solo recuerda todo lo que la música te ha dado y que con solo un clic puedes darles algo a cambio.
Vota en miau.mtvla.com. Miau 2017, desde la Ciudad de México. Estreno. Domingo 4 de junio. Solo por MTV.
Nos une la misma pasión, el humor bien picosito. La culpa es de Cortés.
Un pelaje satinado con textura ligera y sedosa, colores radiantes y una cabellera intensamente brillante. Adopta un carácter irresistible con el poder de deslumbrarte. Adoptaunchico.com.mx.
¿Quieres un juguito de zanahoria?
¡Corte!
Que no venimos del mismo lugar, más bien no importa si eres norteño, chilango, del istmo, yaqui, maya, cajeta o fiera. Esta es tu tierra. Tenemos un mismo origen que no se divide ni se olvida. Porque aunque haya más de un México, México siempre es uno. Cerveza Indio.
I never stop, no, I don't quit. And when I swing, I don't miss. You ain't never seen nothing like this, yeah. You ain't seen nothing like this. Come on and give me some more. You ain't seen nothing like this.
Sus artistas favoritos son escuchados online, pero ellos solo se llevan una pequeña fracción de las ganancias. Por eso decidimos hacer algo al respecto. Marvin presenta Tip Jar. Ve a marvintipjar.com y baja la extensión para tu browser. Escucha tu banda favorita y cada que hagas clic esa canción será disfrutada 100 veces más, generando más ganancias y creando más fans para los artistas sin costarte un solo centavo. Solo recuerda todo lo que la música te ha dado y que con solo un clic puedes darles algo a cambio.
Vota en miau.mtvla.com. Miau 2017, desde la Ciudad de México. Estreno. Domingo 4 de junio. Solo por MTV.
Nos une la misma pasión, el humor bien picosito. La culpa es de Cortés.
Un pelaje satinado con textura ligera y sedosa, colores radiantes y una cabellera intensamente brillante, adopta un carácter irresistible con el poder de deslumbrarte. adoptaunchico.com.mx.
¿Quieres un juguito de zanahoria?
Corte.
Evita el exceso. Que no venimos del mismo lugar, más bien no importa si eres norteño, chilango, del istmo, yaqui, maya, cajeta o fiera. Esta es tu tierra. Tenemos un mismo origen que no se divide ni se olvida. Porque aunque haya más de un México, México siempre es uno. Cerveza Indio.
I never stop, no, I don't quit. And when I swing, I don't miss. You ain't never seen nothing like this, yeah. You ain't seen nothing like this. Come on and give me some more. You ain't seen nothing like this.
Tus artistas favoritos son escuchados online, pero ellos solo se llevan una pequeña fracción de las ganancias. Por eso decidimos hacer algo al respecto. Marvin presenta Tip Jar. Ve a marvintipjar.com y baja la extensión para tu browser. Escucha a tu banda favorita y cada que hagas clic esa canción será disfrutada 100 veces más, generando más ganancias y creando más fans para los artistas sin costarte un solo centavo. Solo recuerda todo lo que la música te ha dado y que con solo un clic puedes darles algo a cambio.
Vota en miau.mtvla.com. Miau 2017, desde la Ciudad de México. Estreno. Domingo 4 de junio. Solo por MTV.
Nos une la misma pasión, el humor bien picosito. La culpa es de Cortés.
Un pelaje satinado con textura ligera y sedosa, colores radiantes y una cabellera intensamente brillante, adopta un carácter irresistible con el poder de deslumbrarte. adoptaunchico.com.mx.
¿Quieres un juguito de zanahoria?
Corte.
Más bien no importa si eres norteño, chilango, del istmo, yaqui, maya, cajeta o fiera. Esta es tu tierra. Tenemos un mismo origen que no se divide ni se olvida. Porque aunque haya más de un México, México siempre es uno. Cerveza Indio.
I never stop, no, I don't quit. And when I swing, I don't miss. You ain't never seen nothing like this, yeah. You ain't seen nothing like this. Come on and give me some more. You ain't seen nothing like this.
Tus artistas favoritos son escuchados online, pero ellos solo se llevan una pequeña fracción de las ganancias. Por eso decidimos hacer algo al respecto. Marvin presenta Tip Jar. Ve a marvintipjar.com y baja la extensión para tu browser. Escucha a tu banda favorita y cada que hagas clic, esa canción será disfrutada 100 veces más, generando más ganancias y creando más fans para los artistas sin costarte un solo centavo. Solo recuerda todo lo que la música te ha dado y que con solo un clic puedes darles algo a cambio.
Vota en miau.mtvla.com. Miau 2017, desde la Ciudad de México. Domingo 4 de junio. Solo por MTV.
Nos une la misma pasión, el humor bien picosito. La culpa es de Cortés.
Un pelaje satinado con textura ligera y sedosa, colores radiantes y una cabellera
El grupo No Age, para quien pido un aplauso, por favor. No Age, uno de los grupos que estarán presentándose en el Festival Marvin CDMX, un grupo que no está en la Ciudad de México por primera vez, ya han estado por acá en algunas otras ocasiones y platicaremos con él en inglés. Si quieren un aparato con traducción simultánea, lo pueden encontrar aquí en la entrada, los pueden utilizar de forma gratuita, así que si necesitan eso, ahí están disponibles. And thank you very much for being here, Randy. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. As I was saying, the guys, I was telling them, this is not your first time in Mexico City.
No, we've been here a few times.
What is this one, like the fourth, fifth one, maybe?
Thinking that, yeah, maybe fifth one. Last time we were here was for a large cooking conference. Our friend Brooks Headley is a world-class chef that lives in New York City, and he's also a drummer in many punk bands before he was a chef, so he invited us to come with him for his presentation. So we played music behind him when he presented his talk about food.
And what was the talk about?
It was about hospitality and
Okay.
how food is really making someone feel welcome. It's not about the ingredients or the taste, it's the feeling that people have. And I think because of us as a band that's traveled a lot, and same with his background as a punk band, that it was, wherever you go, you should feel like you're home. And that's part of a restaurant and a chef's job. It's not about the food, it's the feeling. So we kind of were providing the feeling, the emotion.
And what sort of emotion, what kind of emotion were you trying to share with the audience? Because if I listen to one of your albums, I don't know if that's necessarily what I would play at a dinner with my family at my place, what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think it was very relaxed at first, and we have a lot of ambient sort of collage soundscape elements in our music. So while he was speaking, we were doing that. And then when he finished, he sat down on the drums and we made a big sound. So it was relaxed and then very exciting, which is similar to our music sometimes. We change tempos and we change the vibe up.
And how different is it for you to sit and make and create a song as opposed to being a part of one of these performances, which you do a bunch? Mm-hmm. You're always interconnecting with art shows, fashion shows even.
Yeah.
how different is it for you as a creator?
I love the improvising and sort of unexpected sort of qualities of these events. You know, we're especially larger group events where we're just one element to a larger experience. There's an artist, Doug Aitken, who is from California, and he does a lot of interdisciplinary media events. And he'd asked us, sorry, this would be my name dropping moment, but we went to Greece with him, and the performance was on a barge with four sides. The audience was all around us, and Chloe, the actress Chloe Sevigny, was performing on stage while we had kind of played some music in the background again. And then we had a moment where we kind of took center stage and then receded back, and there was tap dancers and whippers, and it was a crazy experience. But for us, that's fun because we're just one flavor to an overall sort of thing. And I think the collaboration is really exciting because it informs what we do and how we go back to making music on our own. I feel in some ways too, it's a community, and so much of where we come from is this DIY, very small, just creative community, and it's fun to grow that to a larger scale and be able to travel the world and still bring that community and collaboration aspect to it. It's not like, no, we're the stars, nobody else on stage. We like to be involved and to take chances.
There's something very interesting there. How is that punk?
Oh, well, I think I subscribe to the idea that punk is what you make it. You know, this is a classic D. Boone from the Minutemen saying. And SST Records from Southern California was the label that Greg Ginn from Black Flag ran, and it had bands like Sonic Youth and Dinosaur Jr. and the Meat Puppets, as well as Black Flag. And so it's this real, kind of mix of styles of music. It wasn't just all power chords, all fast beats, the way maybe punk is sold later down the road, like a Sex Pistols or something like that. I think that it's much more about just standing apart and being yourself. And I think that creates a community of individuals. Sometimes there's an oxymoron there, or a catch-22. I think of punk as very individualistic, but it happens in a community. So but everybody does their own thing. It's not a lot of clones or just everybody copying each other. It's really knowing who you are, but taking chances and expressing things that nobody else is saying.
A couple of weeks ago, I just read this sentence that said that there's no punkest thing in the world than growing your own vegetables.
It's true.
Or maybe creating community. That's super punk, because that's what the government doesn't want you or doesn't want us to do.
Right. Well, I think that reminds me of another, classic punk band, Crass. They were very anarcho peace punks, very much kind of grew out of a hippie sort of movement in the 70s into their very caustic, fast punk fast punk music in the 80s. But they all lived on a farm that they squatted, and they didn't pay rent on this farm, but they grew their own food, and everybody had a job, and you had to work. And we've been lucky enough on our travels to have a friend who knew somebody, and we went out to the Crass farm and got to meet some of the people there, and it's amazing it's still going on. And I think there is something very punk about taking care of your own, that it's not, you can't expect anybody else to do it for you, or this DIY. It's not just an aesthetic, you have to get it done yourself, and you do it, and sometimes it takes a village or it takes a community, but you don't ask permission, you just do it, and you work around that. Because if it was up to the government or any kind of controlling powers, they don't want this freedom of expression and stirring up ideas, and especially now in America, I think the DIY grassroots art scene is seen as something very almost criminal. I think in some ways we've had problems, sorry, we don't have to get too political about it, but there's things going on right around this election and around this new regime in America that places artists playing for small communities very much as criminals. And where if you don't have fire exits, they're going to shut you down. And there's safety concerns, of course, but I think there is a larger motivation about expression and shutting down those avenues.
So since we're doing punk history, and I didn't know we were going to do this.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's great. How does punk intertwines with skateboarding? Because that's something that you're also a part of, and that's also a community, and that's also a mean of expression, and that's also a thing that we can all relate to. Like the transportation.
Sure.
In that way,
I think I always look at skateboarding as a very individual sort of sport with big quotes. I mean, it's more. Some of my favorite skaters are the skaters that were influential on me, like Mark Gonzalez or Ed Templeton, had this artistic background as well. So their life on the skateboard as well as off the skateboard was about creativity and about doing things that weren't done. And I think a skateboard is, something that is relatively affordable, and it allows you the freedom to go wherever you want and find your treasure in someone else's trash. A parking lot where nobody else is, or a wall or a set of stairs that nobody would look twice at. Somebody who doesn't skate can become the playground that you've always dreamed of, and you can turn the world into something else through skateboarding. And so I've always carried that idea on into music, or even into creating sounds that we do for No Age, where something that might just be the worst feedback or a big mistake of a box of glass falling down the stairs, like we got to make a song with that. That's the exciting part about it, because I think there's energy there that isn't planned and that you can't premeditate, and I think skateboarding is a lot about improvising and thinking on your feet and falling hard. And I think sometimes our music and our performances, sometimes you just take that fall, and instead of feeling embarrassed, it's a part of the process. You have to pick yourself back up and keep going. That's how you learn, and that's how you grow.
And you found a very important outlet for your music on skateboarding videos. That's something that you do even more often than releasing albums. You create scores for those videos. Why is that an interesting thing for you guys? Why do you like to release your music through that media? Yeah,
well, I grew up skateboarding, and Dean did also, and I think in our teens and 20s, it was something that, was just like as simple as breathing. Of course, that's how you'd go to school, you'd hang out with your friends, that's where all your community was. Even before music for me, because it was in a small town. There weren't a lot of weirdos. I would have a 4-track setup in my bedroom, but I couldn't really find all the other misfits. But skateboarding, that I could find the crazy people, the crazy ones. So that's sort of is where I come from. And when the opportunity comes up, if somebody asks us or presents the idea of, I'm making this skate video, do you have any songs, or do you want to participate? To me, it just is that, like, it reminds me of my youth and empowering somebody else. And I think at this point, I've gone through enough surgeries and had my own kind of some falls I didn't get up from so quick. So I kind of feel like I'd love to continue participating in skateboard without breaking anything too hard anymore at this point. I'm 36, and I feel like, you at 14 you bounce, at 36 you lay there, and that's okay. I don't want to pretend that I can keep up with a lot of these kids, and I've been lucky enough to meet people, and these guys are athletes. I mean, at this point, they really train hard, and they've been a lifelong pursuit, just like in music. If somebody picks up a guitar, like, I could do what you do, and it's like, you got to put some time in, I think, to really, get the respect there. So I can appreciate any involvement with skateboarding from afar, from a music standpoint. I'm really proud of that.
So you were 26 the first time you released an album?
That sounds right, sure. 10 years ago, was that the Sub Pop? Or we had one called Weirdo Rippers on Fat Cat.
About weirdos.
Yeah.
But Weirdo Rippers, was that like a compilation of 5 different EPs that you released through 5 different labels, right?
Yes, yeah. The idea was to do that simultaneously, like release them all in different cities.
What the hell were you thinking about?
I can tell you. I don't know where everyone's kind of, is this music journalists, or these are attendees?
No, these are
just everybody,
fans.
just fans. Okay.
Yeah.
So, because I think for us it was important at the time, and this was 2006, before the internet was really something that it is today in terms of the music distribution. This was still MySpace days, if you kind of remember that. Picture that idea. So instead of going on Bandcamp and putting up 20 songs and just go, well, we'll see what happens, this was an idea that we had to be part of an underground scene. Like, we'd met friends through touring bands and through different people in like New York and London and Sweden, and so we thought we got the idea, like, well, it's too hard to become, because in your own hometown you start to feel like, oh, I'm a pretty big band, and then you go tour and you realize nobody cares. So we had this feeling that we're like, well, if we could release small EPs in all these different towns, maybe those record labels would help us set up shows. It's a good way a good excuse for us to travel. You know, we have the music and they're going to put out a 7-inch, like maybe they can at least help set up a show. They won't pay for a ticket, but at least if we have a show, okay, we could do it small and do it slowly that way. And it just helped us, because then now their friends that they knew, that helped them run the label, were excited about us coming, versus us just putting one record out or putting one thing out from Los Angeles and thinking, we're the biggest band in the world and we're going to go out there. And if you don't make friends with people in those towns, then they don't know who you are. They're not celebrating you. They're not championing you as the underdog that they want to see succeed. So for us, the idea was a little crazy, but also, you know, there was a method to the madness. And all 5 EPs, if you flipped them over, they each had a letter. And if you flipped them all over and you had the collection, it spelled out no age. So 5 EPs, 5 letters, and no age. And to us, it was kind of our first sort of conceptual release. So.
And the first gig of the band, the first concert that you made was in a gallery. So the band has always been pretty deep into the art world.
Yeah.
How come? Were you an artist? Did you study art?
Yeah.
And then you meet each other there? What was that?
Dean is really the much more formal artist. Okay. I think I tend to keep in the music world, and he ventures a little bit more out into conceptual worlds. But the idea behind that, again, it really came from Dean, but it was something we shared, was the dissatisfaction of the club kind of community, or the club circuit in Los Angeles. You know, it's a big city, not as big as Mexico City, but there's a lot of bars, and you go there and you play for 20 minutes, and if you don't bring 40 friends, then they don't pay you, or it's about selling beer. And I think it's a difficult thing to get into when you're young and starting to play music, to understand that you're just, a beer salesman for that time you're on stage. If you sell enough beer or enough drinks, then they'll have you back. It's not about how good you are. It's not about how interesting you are, not how artistic you are. It's about beer, being part of that nightlife, club commerce. And so that was something we saw early on, and just thought, wow, this band is never going to work that way. One, we weren't interested, and two, they weren't interested either. You have to be honest. Nobody was, there weren't any big clubs, busting our door down. So we thought, well, what is interesting, and what do we have access to? And we had some friends, and we were fans of a lot of these cooler underground galleries, and we always felt like, well, that could be an interesting way to do it, and at least for us to begin playing music, because it's hard. You have to play a lot of shows to evolve your sound. So we had a friend, Rich Jacobs, that had a show in Los Angeles at this New Image Art Gallery, and so we asked if we could play, or he had an opening, and he'd asked if we wanted to do something. So
was that in downtown LA?
That one was actually in Hollywood, okay. But the Smell is an all ages art venue or music venue that also doubles as a gallery as well. But I think more people go there for the music than they go for the art.
Yeah.
But this place, New Image, was a legitimate art gallery. Yeah.
We don't really have in Mexico these kind of all ages spaces. And that's very important for punk in the States. How does that work? What is it important to have those venues? Because also it's very important for the owners of the clubs over here to sell beers and to sell alcohol, and they don't really think about developing new audiences. That's very important, I think, to cater to.
It's been huge. It's been huge for us, and just in our world. And I think some of the things you have to kind of locate it where nobody else wants to go. That was the idea, at least when the Smell went to downtown. It was known for only drug addicts and homeless people in that area, and it was not safe. Your car would get broken into, but the result of that was that the rent was cheap, and that only people that really wanted to go see the music would go there. And it was always a little frightening, but you knew that that's where the cool stuff was happening. And it was, never sold alcohol. It was always, $5, close to that, and it was a great place for us to learn how to book bands, because we weren't just trying to play ourselves. We were helping our friends play and, book their shows. I learned to do sound and just overall sweep. And, we got involved by being fans. We were there all the time. People start to recognize you. The owner starts to recognize you, and you're the first one there, the last one to leave. He's like, who are you? You just get noticed, but it wasn't because we just didn't walk up and say, hey, book my band. Like, no, like, okay, I'm never coming back here. It was something we knew we wanted to be involved in, but in order to get something out of it, we had to give something. So that was kind of how it worked. We spent a long time just volunteering and just helping out, and it was fun. Met a lot of friends there and had some wild times.
So we were talking a little bit before about making this music for those skating videos. A bunch of them have been sponsored by big brands, maybe like bands. I've worked with them and a bunch of them. Is there any conflict for a musician with a punk background into going with deals with these big brands?
Yeah, I think there's always some kind of obligation you have to understand what the company is, but I think it's also important to understand that across all genres, there is some kind of underwriting. There's, it almost reminds me a lot of like the feudal sort of system where people would sponsor an artist. You'd have a patron of the arts. I think in the visual art world, that's a very big thing. In punk music or popular music, that just you're selling out. And not to say that one's the same or the other, but I think there's a conversation to be had of how do you finance certain things. And these videos, like a skate video for Vans, that was brought to me by the director, Greg Hunt, who I've been friends with for a long time, and I've just had like personal relationships with people that have worked their way up to become sort of influential within the company. So I felt like, okay, like these friends I know do quality work, and that video in particular was the first skate video that Vans had ever done. Like for a company like that who as large as they were, they had never really done a skate video. So this was really important to them to create a big artifact, and I understood what that meant, and I was happy to be part of that.
Yeah. So you guys, as No Age, are just about to embark on a large tour.
Yeah.
Does that mean that there's an album coming out?
Yeah,
it's been 4 years. Since the last one. Which one does that? An Object, right?
An Object was 2013. We just finished recording this week. We just finished all the mastering and everything, so that should get turned in as soon as we get back. Thank you. Yeah, it's going to be it'll be coming out this fall. And then we'll do a bigger tour around that. Yeah, I think the 4 years off was really for us. Like we toured really solid for about 10 to 12 years. Because even before we were in this band, we were in other bands, and it was great. But we kind of reached a point where we felt disconnected a little bit from our home, and for really caring so much about our friends and our community, we got to a point where we were never there, and it was hard to be. It was hard to be gone all the time, and we also just wanted to start families. So I have a 3-year-old son now, and Dean has a 1-year-old son, and for us it was just important to take that time to make sure that we had a life or a reason to go home.
But you never stopped doing music, right?
No, we always kept playing. We'd always do one-off shows. We just weren't focused on putting out a full-length record. We felt like 3 full-length records in 6 years, or about 6 or 7 years, and it was a lot, back to back to back, and we kind of reached a point where we needed some downtime.
And you were still doing music for the Rodarte shows, which is a relationship that I really, really admire.
Oh my gosh, they're great.
It's really great what you've done together. And Rodarte is this like fashion studio.
Yeah.
And you guys have been working together for a while by now. How did that collaboration started? How did that relationship started?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. We have a friend, Wendy Yao, who has a boutique store in Los Angeles called Ooga Booga, and they sell really cool artworks and T-shirts. For a long time, they sold our T-shirts online. Like we didn't sell our own, but we'd sell them through her. So she was good friends with Kate and Laura, and we just kind of met through parties. And they were doing a video about one of their collections, and they asked for us to collaborate on a song for that. And they're such beautiful people, and it's amazing just what they do. They throw like a kind of punk prom every year that they present with, again, sorry, I'm from Hollywood here, with Kirsten Dunst, this actress. And so, but to get to know these people is really just kind of like big kids. I think we're all kind of around the same age, growing up in the 80s, and have a lot of really kind of nerdy interests. So they would always throw great parties and like Halloween parties. You come dressing up, and it's like, oh right, that's it's a funny thing to just see these stars all in their Halloween costumes at a small suburban porch, giving candy out. I think it's like Elijah Wood or Natalie Portman or Kim Gordon. It was just kind of like being nerds dressed up for Halloween, but it's not like super cool. It's actually kind of uncool in that kind of way, where it's like just giving out candy on the porch all night. So
Yeah,
we've
yeah.
had fun just kind of knowing them as friends and collaborating with them.
And through those collaborations, you made your way into museums as well. I saw that art show at the MoCA where it was the Black Swan thing.
Oh my gosh,
there was
yes.
music by you in there. So you've been also connected.
Oh,
into
right, yeah,
museums, and
Yeah.
doing things with the MoCA and with LACMA. How does that happen? When does an institution like that reaches out to a punk band in order to ask for something?
Yeah, I think it's usually through the curator or the artists themselves. You know, I think there was a great curator in Los Angeles for a while, Jeffrey Deitch, who was always kind of looking for underground artists. And so when he came on at the board at MoCA, I think he thought of us to play things there. It's that crossover. I think we were never afraid of it. If anything, we liked it. Was like playing these small galleries, and in another way, like instead of playing a larger theater, it's like we play this museum. You know, just kind of following that trajectory the way a fine artist would. I think was always something that was interesting for us.
So regarding the new album, do you already have a name for it?
I think there's a working title right now. I don't know if anything's been locked in.
Okay,
But,
and what can we expect from that?
Yeah.
What's the sound of
Yeah.
No Age 4 years?
4 years later. The good thing is if any of you guys are coming to the show tomorrow, we're going to play about 80% of the new record.
Nice.
Just because we're working on it. We're going to play some of the old songs too, but we're just, our head and our brain is so much into this new stuff right now, because that last stuff was about 4 years ago. So we're really excited just about this writing process now. And so when we were rehearsing for this show, we're like, well, we got to play that one. We've been in love with these songs. These are like the new girlfriends, you know, like, oh, we got to play all these songs. So we're going to play a lot of it. So you'll hear it tomorrow. It's always hard to describe music, but I don't know. I think I love what we've done. I feel like the songwriting is maybe a little bit more interesting. I don't know. It's hard for me to talk about my own process, some of it, but I don't think it's not all fast. It's not all slow. I don't know. It's something that I'm excited. It's a good place, I feel like, for us to be.
Yeah, so are you still locked within the idea of being a two-piece band? Do you think that's going to ever change?
I don't think so at this point. I think we've done a lot of collaborations with different people, and we've brought on touring members for the Everything in Between record, or second record for Sub Pop. We had somebody triggering samples live, because that was part of our writing process. We would record these pieces of music and then chop them up and then rearrange the songs and then play guitar and drums over them. So we felt like we needed somebody to kind of trigger those samples live, because that was so much how we wrote the record. And then the next record didn't have that, so we went back to a two-piece live on stage. But I think the two-piece format works for us. It's one of those restrictions that I think causes like a necessity for creativity. You know, it's like the mother of invention, right? You have to think of something, you know, like how do we make it sound like there's 40 people on stage when there's only 2 people? Or how do we, you know, express ourselves in just this finite, we only have 2 hands, only have 2 feet, you know?
Yeah. So before we end this,
Yep.
would you mind if we check in with the audience? If
Please,
there's,
yeah.
A question or something. ¿Hay alguien por acá en el público que tenga una pregunta antes de que terminemos con esto? Sí, el caballero de lentes y camisa roja a cuadros. Ahí te va un micrófono.
Gracias. Para los últimos años en la Ciudad de México, do you need
Do you want to translate it, or is there a translator
Do you
person?
want to? Yeah, you have translator over there.
Okay,
If you
whatever
feel
works.
like using
Sure.
the earpiece.
Sorry.
Okay.
This is like the UN. Okay. Yeah.
Los últimos años en la Ciudad de México han explotado millones de tipos de negocios nuevos, de restaurantes, de food trucks, de salones de belleza con uñas de gel y cosas que hace 5 años no había. Es demasiado, y es un auge de startups, se le dice. Esto, la música de guitarras lo ha visto desde hace 40 años. No es, desde hace 40 años han salido bandas y bandas y bandas que hacen cosas nuevas. Tal vez unos hacen música de uñas de gel, tal vez unos hacen música de food truck, no importa. ¿En algún momento en tu trayectoria con guitarras te has sentido como un empleado nada más de No Age? Como un empleado del rock, especialmente con la oferta tan grande y creciente de música de guitarras que hay hoy en día?
Okay. Do I feel like an employee of rock and roll? Right.
I'm glad I didn't have to translate that.
Yeah, that was perfect. Sorry, it took me a second for him to finish. Yes, I think. Okay, hold on. I'm going to take it off so he doesn't. He'll distract me. I think there's two parts of that, right? The gentrification, especially in this area. I was speaking with Nino on our way over here because that happens a lot in Los Angeles, where all the cool kids with the cool hats and everything shows up, and you're like, oh man, my rent just blew up. My rent just went through the roof. So so you don't, you have to kind of battle that, right? And always stay kind of on the fringe or just doing something that's a individual expression and not following a trend, but also keeping a balance to where you can afford to live, right? You know, always being interesting. I think the employee aspect of it, I think the only time it happens, honestly, and that's maybe some of the reason for our touring is slowed down, is on the tour cycle, or you have to put a record out and then tour for 6 months. And then you begin to feel that like you're a monkey on stage a little bit. It's hard to just manufacture the enthusiasm every night after 60 days in a row, that 61st show. You're like, I'm a little tired. If it's about being honest, if it's about giving your whole body and energy to this experience of a live show, that can feel, you feel like, all right, time to get to work. And there's nothing wrong with that. I understand that's part of the business of being in a band, but that's something that I think we've tried to address as we've moved on. I think when you're young, you're just like, that's what everybody does. We go on tour for 2 years. And then you realize, oh, I'm depleted. I'm sick. I can't. The shows aren't as good anymore. People say, oh, you guys aren't so good. We're like, well, we've been doing it too much. So you have to balance that out. But yeah, the I don't know, the new boutiques, the things like that. I don't know. Are there still? Where's the next cool area? Right. I was telling Nino too. My wife and I moved over to the Hill to an area that's a little bit more druggy. Not because we do drugs, but just because it was affordable. But we were, instead of now like keeping it a secret, we tell everybody, oh, this is the new cool area. Now we're homeowners. Like, oh yeah, everybody move here. Yeah. So I think it's just, I think for art always exists where it's affordable to live, and I think now landlords know that. So we'll see this in Los Angeles and New York, where a new building goes up in a bad area, and they'll invite an art gallery to come in, for a year and make it very hip, and then then they kick them out and sell it off. So I think we're all smart, and we just have to be punk, and we have to be scrappy.
It's the same with music.
Yeah.
There's gentrification in music.
Ooh. I think so. I think it's the good stuff always, wants to get out. And I see that more almost in like the hip hop kind of underground communities with like trap music or something like this, where it's like comes out of house parties in kind of rural or like, urban areas. And then it's the next hit record. And I think that's always been the case, it's fads. Music is always, what have you done for me today? So I don't think we can really always fight that, but I think that part of it's just holding on to what you like, even if it's not cool anymore. You're still just like, that'll be cool in another 10 years. I can't worry about always being the coolest guy today, I think.
¿Alguna pregunta más? Una más por allá.
Oh, yep.
Hola. Retomando el espacio el tema del espacio que se le da a las bandas, tú comentabas que cuando tú empezabas se volvían promotores de cerveza, porque pensaban más en el hecho de que cuánta cerveza vendías. Aquí en la Ciudad de México se está dando últimamente un fenómeno en el que ciertos promotores obligan a las bandas que si tú quieres tocar, vas a tocar 4 canciones, pero me tienes que vender 25 boletos de 150 pesos cada uno. Entonces es pues a ver cómo sacas, y es la única forma en la que muchos foros te dan el espacio. ¿Qué opinas tú al respecto y cómo crees que estas bandas mexicanas underground que quieren darse a conocer podrían atacar este problema?
Yeah, that's exactly what happens in Los Angeles and Hollywood. I mean, there's venues where you have to pay to play, and they do this a lot with teenagers. You know, they make your parents buy so many tickets because you're not going to sell. You don't have friends that can afford to go see your dumb band play. So your parents shell out $200, like, you know, I don't know, in the States we have Girl Scout cookies or chocolates for school. It's unfortunate, but I think as, you know, we become our own independent people and not kids, it's the choice is yours. I think it doesn't have to be black or white. You know, it doesn't always have to be only do this and never do that. But you have to kind of trust your heart and what feels right. And I think there's nothing wrong with, all right, we tried a few of those shows because that's where the people are at. But while you're there, pass out all the flyers for your underground warehouse show that you're throwing yourself or your friends are throwing that has no sponsors or nothing. Like, or even that same night, you know, hey, we played our 4 songs, you bought the beer, but if you want to see what's really cool, come here, you know, or text it, you know, put it up, put it out there, and just to get the word out. You can always, sometimes you flip it on them. They think, oh, we got the cool band. And we're like, no, we're just using you to get our word out. You know, it's about who has the power in these situations. And I think, especially as an artist that's beginning, you have the power of anonymity. Like, nobody knows who you are. So whatever you do is you're creating something for yourself. I think, you know, what I've learned, you know, over years of being a band, like, oh, I know who you are. Like, you don't do this, don't change, or you should change, or people have expectations for you when you've been a band long enough. But as a band starting out, you have the ability to just be uniquely yourself, and you don't owe anything to anybody. So however, you know, and if the community says like, oh, we won't book you if you play that, well then fuck you, they're closed-minded. I think really that's the punk attitude as well. It's not about rules, and everybody does this, everybody doesn't do that. I've always felt like it, you know, it's individual, and to find that community or to find those group of people. And I know I'm making it sound easier than it is, but I learned a lot just from going to shows. And if I didn't see the show that I wanted, if you have enough people around you, you start to go like, okay, you know, it's a basement show. There's only 10 people here, but some of those are the best times I've had. And it's out of those 10 people, it can start to grow. And maybe that implodes. Maybe those bands break up and another band starts. And you kind of learn over years who the people are that are committed to that. And even within yourself, sometimes, you know, like my wife played in a band and went on a tour and her van got totaled, and the drummer was an alcoholic and quit and was crazy, and you know, and then she got home and said, okay, I feel okay with this for a little while. I'm going to take a break, and that's fine too. It's still punk just to go do it. You know what I mean? Not everything has to be a hero story. These aren't all Disney stories. These are our lives, and our lives as artists are about, you know, one is surviving and expressing. You know what I mean? I also believe that, you know, you don't have to die for your art. You don't have to eat dirt every day to be a respected artist. So however you navigate that world is up to you, because at the end of the day, it's the product or the expression you make. Like, don't ever like quit because you think it's too hard and nobody wants to see it. You have to just finish it. That's my biggest advice to anybody. Sorry, I'm becoming the advice master. But I just think, like, you know, just finish it. Finish your record. Book your show. Don't quit your band. If you can stay in there, you know, just because stuff gets hard, just keep going and fighting, and something will happen. But it's you know, I don't know. It's a business, and a lot of people treat it like a business. And I think, you know, you have to make that what you want. You can't ask for a favor. You know, you can't expect everybody to come to you. If there's always going to be shitty people. And as what I've noticed is, the more popular, the higher we've gone in the ranks. It's the same fucking snakes. The same sharks are out there, but now they're on bigger levels, and they run bigger record labels. They run bigger promotions. They throw bigger festivals. So the same guys that are trying to nickel and dime you at a show to sell 40 tickets now, you know, they want you to sell 400 tickets, and they want you to wear these jeans, and you go like, I'm not in. You know, you have to pick and choose your battles. So.
Randy Randall, un aplauso, por favor, para nuestro invitado.
Thank you, guys. Gracias.
Thank you very much. Muchas gracias a todos.
Brillante. Adopta un carácter irresistible con el poder de deslumbrarte. Adoptaunchico.com.mx